if I had one superpower in my life, and I reflected about this, we do this exercise sometimes on executive meetings, like, what's your superpower and all that, and whatever. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But the one thing I've done well in my life is I'm good at like fitting in different groups. Since I was a kid, I could be in school with like 3 different groups and be friends with all of them. And that has been kind of the story of my life, living in different places, making community, making friends. So it is something I really enjoy. My wife says I have a problem. I need to be liked by everybody or I feel bad. But I don't know. That's the one thing I do well, I guess.
What does a general manager role involve? How do you establish your company's first international office? And what skills from lawyering can you draw on to do it well? Today, we are joined on the abstract by my friend Manuel Martinez-Herrera, the general manager for BetterCloud in Mexico, and also BetterCloud's general counsel. BetterCloud is a complete and insights-fueled platform for end-to-end SaaS management for IT. It helps track SaaS applications and expenses, automate user permissions and access, and secure cloud files. That sounds like a classic SaaS tech business to me. Complicated, but makes things simpler, and everyone needs it.
Don't we all do the same?
Before joining BetterCloud, Manuel was the VP of Legal and Compliance at Namely. He also spent time as an in-house lawyer at MetLife, and he started his career at a variety of firms in New York City, Spain, and Argentina. Pretty cool. Lived and worked in a lot of countries. Thanks so much for joining me today for this episode of The Abstract.
I am honored to be called your friend, Tyler, of such a superstar in the legal community.
That makes 2 of us, I hope. It's good to be in good company with folks like you. Let's go back a few years. I mentioned, you went to law school or you worked in Spain. You went to law school in Spain. And then like actually our CEO at SpotDraft, you got your LL.M at Harvard. I recently had another great person in the legal community, Flavia Navas, on. She was the GC of Circle, and we had an extended conversation around the challenges and also the opportunities associated with transitioning from being a foreign trained lawyer to practicing in the United States. Let's just start. Like, why did you decide you wanted to come and practice here? What was that experience like? Take us through that transition.
Yeah, so I actually don't know Flavia, but a really good friend of my wife, Laura Kaufman, used to work for her at Circle. So shout out to Laura and Flavia.
Excellent.
I heard excellent things about her. To me, coming to the US to study was always, I guess, kind of in the cards. My mom, I'm born and raised in Madrid in Spain. My dad was from Spain. All my family from my dad's side is from Spain. But my mom was actually from, believe it or not, Cleveland, Ohio. And she moved to... Yep. Very random. She moved to Spain for her last year of college and then decided to stay there because she likes Spain a lot. So I grew up coming to the US to visit my family here almost every summer and always had an inkling of like I wanted to try living here, that kind of stuff. And when I was finishing law school in Spain, which is undergrad, like in most countries, law school is undergrad. So you're basically 18, you don't know what you're doing, and you go study law. It's a profession that opens doors, I guess, sometimes. On my last year, and this will show how old I am, I look at this bulletin board in my law school, and I had this advertisement from this law firm called Cuatro Casas, which is one of the big Spanish law firms. And they have this very cool program to which I owe a lot of my career, in which basically the first 2 years, every 6 months, you change practice and you change cities. And after 2 years, you go study an LL.M. So my first 2 years, I did a year in Barcelona, 6 months in Buenos Aires, and 6 months in Madrid. And then I applied to the LL.Ms. I got into Harvard, and I went to my LL.M in Harvard. And then you do a year at a law firm. And then usually you come back to Spain, to Cuatro Casas. I did not do that last part. I never came back. that created some friction with them. We're best friends now again, but that's how I got to the US, right? That program opened a lot of doors, and I'm super grateful for it. And that's how I got here. Yeah. I mean, not here. Now I'm in Mexico City. That's how I got to New York, I guess.
What a fantastic program. It's almost like
It's amazing.
I had another DC, the Cravath sort of model, right, of rotation, but it adds an international element to it. Amazing.
Yeah.
When you started to establish yourself here in New York, decided to stay, did you think, I want to be a firm lawyer? Did you have in-house in your sights? Like what did that look like? What were your ambitions at that time?
Yeah, I guess when I was a baby lawyer, I always wanted to be a firm lawyer. So I was at this firm, Cuatro Casas. They sent me to another firm in Argentina. And these firms are based on the kind of like the US model. They try to replicate that big law feeling. And I know a lot of people have different feelings against or in favor to these firms. My experience had always been great. Like I made great friends, met a lot of smart people, had to work hard, but also I was single, no family at the time. So it's a time when you can work hard, and also when you have free time, you can go out and have fun, right? So to me, the law firm world was great. I was in White & Case. When I got to New York, I get to White & Case. I was there for I guess 5 years plus. And at one point, and this goes a lot with, I think, the way I am as a person, I get nervous. I get anxious. I want to do something else. So after 5 years there, I was like, shit, I need a break. I want to travel the world. What am I doing? I'm like 29, 30. Am I like wasting my best years? So I talked to my partner, who's to this day, really good friend of mine. Actually, my wife, who's a landscape architect, just did a project for him. He's an awesome guy. And I was like, I just need some time to travel. And he was like, yeah, well, we have this policy in the firm. You can take up to 6 months, which I don't know if people in White & Case know about it, but if they don't, they should do it. So I took 3 months. I traveled a month in Mexico. I traveled a month in Argentina. And then I was back in Spain for a month. And when I came back, I had started dating who's now my wife. Who's from New York. So I had in my mind, maybe it's time for me to go back to Spain. And then I was like, but now I'm dating someone I really like, and she's from New York. But also I was like, but life in a law firm, will I make partner? Will I not? Is it not the best life? And at that point is when I started thinking about in-house. And then is when I made the transition. You have one of those really bad days, a recruiter calls you, and then all of a sudden you're changing your life.
I think that's how it really happens for a lot of people, actually, as much as everyone wants to say, oh, we had this whole 6 month or 9 month plan. You went in-house and you had success, right? I mean, working your way to a GC role is not easy. I don't want to sort of pass over or smooth over your in-house experience entirely, but I do think that this moment where you decide to go from GC to GM is something that we want to talk about today and we want to get to. As you became GC, though, when did you feel like you were ready to lead a legal team, right? Like when did you feel like you had enough experience, you had the skill set that now it's time to be the one who's building and leading a whole legal org?
Yeah, I don't even know if I have that today. I just knew I was at MetLife, and I mean, I learned a lot, and it was a great place to be my first in-house gig, but I was just one of many. It was so much bureaucracy, red tape. It just felt like everything was moving too slow. So I was ready for a change. And when I got this opportunity at Namely to be the head of the legal team, to have a team, I was like, I don't know if I'm ready, but fuck it, I want to do it. I think it sounds like fun. So I jumped to it, and the two things I've always, I think, kind of done decently in my career is I learn as I go, and I'm not afraid of learning new things, and I get along with people. And I think with those two things, then you can lead people, so.
Yeah, absolutely. For a lot of folks, like I said, GC feels like the destination. More recently, how did you know that you wanted to take on more? And also, I guess, how did you do that? How did you go about it? What does that sort of look like to set yourself up for it internally?
Yeah, my dad used to say that I'm unable to lay. It's a Spanish expression, but it if you were to translate it to English, it's something like you're unable to lay your egg. You're unable to, and that means you're always wanting to do something different. You cannot spend much time doing the same thing. So to me, it's always been what's next, and not because what I'm doing is not good. It's just I'm like, should I be doing something else? Is this all that life has for me?
Yeah.
So I keep asking myself, what else can I do? And if I'm offered something within the company to do something else, something new, I'm like, sure, why not? Let's try it. And I think that
Yeah.
mentality has served me well to move from a legal role to then have a hybrid of legal plus business. And
Absolutely.
I would argue that even if your role is just legal, you should see your role as business. A good
Yeah.
lawyer is a good business person. So I think that's the right mentality.
And I think this is something that, I've discussed with other guests that I'm sure you've talked about yourself at TechGC conferences or other great sort of community gatherings like that. People in legal are particularly well positioned to do this because it's an extremely cross-functional role. You're going to see a lot of problems come across your desk, most likely, that may not have a clear owner or no one's grabbed onto yet. I'm sure you've had that experience too.
1,000%. And it's like lawyers we're very rational, very logical people. And at the end of the day, a business is about solving problems. And when you unshackle yourself, when you are making a decision that's not legal and it's not, the consequence is not, are we going to get a fine? Are we going to get sued? It's more of a business decision where the stakes are different. You unshackle yourself of that, then all your power of solving problems becomes even better.
Yeah.
Also, we're very organized. We tend to be organized people. So when you have to project manage big projects between different departments and I feel like lawyers make shit happen. So that's what business needs, right? Shit needs to happen.
Absolutely. I mean, what makes a CEO happier than they assign someone to fix a problem or drive a project to its conclusion that perhaps had been festering for 6 months, and then like in a matter of 6 weeks it's done, right?
Exactly.
You're going to curry favor with other members of the C-suite that way. And I think that's a lot of maybe what you do. I want you to describe for us, like, what does the GM of BCMX mean? I personally love ambiguous roles and ambiguous titles, and being a general manager seems like the manifestation of all of
that. It's funny because my daughter keeps asking, she's 7, and she keeps asking me, what is exactly that you do? I know like mom designs gardens and she knows a lot about plants, but what do you do? I'm like, I go to meetings, I send emails. That's about it. But more seriously, and yeah, it is an ambiguous role, and it's a role that I kind of made it what I wanted to make it, and also obviously what the company needed. But it has morphed a lot. It's been now, I took officially this role in January of 23 when we didn't even have an entity here. And the first 6 months was all about the setup, right? And that was obviously, you're very well suited as a lawyer to set up the entity, figure out all the accounting and financial stuff with the finance team, and then come here, find the office space. So that was kind of like January to June of 2023. And then June to December of 2023 was mostly about the recruiting, right? We had to recruit a bunch of people quickly. We got to 40 people within 4 months. So it was all about making sure we were hiring the right people and we had the mechanisms to scale and do that. So that was kind of like the next 6 months. And then from then on, so call it January of 2024 to now, it's all been about making sure the office works. We have the right culture, we have the right people, they're enabled, right? You have all these new people on average with junior people, right? Most of them are junior engineers that need more enablement than more senior folks. So making sure they have what they need to be successful. And then also becoming the bridge between the US and Mexico, because we have many teams that have folks in both sides of the border. And there's things that get lost in translation. So being that person that helps managers on one side understand what's going on with their teams on the other side and the other way around.
Do you feel like that sort of role, this role that you've taken on, requires a mindset shift from maybe the way that you were thinking about problems before, or at least it's sort of like the immediate identification of risk that probably was your go-to? Okay, I've been called into a meeting, I've been called into a room. Yeah, how do you feel like your mindsets had to change a little bit in this role?
Yeah, there's a lot. A piece of it is the human element, right? It's I don't here in the Mex. It's interesting here in the Mexico office. Yes, I'm the general manager, so I guess I'm the most senior person in the office. But I only have one person that directly reports to me in this office, right? The other that follows the report to me are not actually two people as of yesterday, but the other folks that report to me are not in Mexico. But I'm still kind of like the leader of the site, the leader of the office. So you have to influence and be able to lead from a less hierarchical point of view, and you become more of the counselor and the advisor, emotionally, work-wise, for a bunch of people on both sides, and making sure you can fix those problems and those issues many times with indirect influence versus direct influence. So it's a very interesting skill that I had to learn, because it's easier when someone reports to you. It's not to solve their problems than when someone does not report to you. But I'm responsible for like 60 folks here, and so that has been a learning curve for me, but something that's been challenging but very rewarding.
Yeah, you mentioned, I mean, most of the folks who are in the office are software engineers. And you're responsible for culture. How have you adapted to working with engineers most of the time, and also maybe getting good at helping hire them? That seems like engineers are a little bit of a different breed, right? I mean, if you worked in a tech company before and you have, say, a legal background, you might more immediately find some kinship, I would say, maybe with like product managers, people who are a little more external facing, right? So like, how have you adapted to working really well with engineers?
Yeah, it's interesting when you peel the onion with engineers, not that dissimilar to lawyers, very analytical people, very rational, very logical. And at their heart, many of them can be nerds, like many lawyers are. So there's been a lot of bonding around things I used to like when I was younger, such as Dragon Ball and things like soccer. Soccer is huge in Mexico. I'm a big Real Madrid fan. Our office happens to be right next to the Cibeles Fountain, which is where Real Madrid supporters celebrate their championships. Just by happenstance happens to be here, or maybe because I chose where the office goes. But there's a lot of that. So there's a lot of ping pong. We have a ping pong table. I play a lot with the guys here. That table has been used so much. I've never seen. They love ping pong. So there's that, and then there's the trust and that you get by showing to them that you're here to go to bat for them and to help them with their problems, and you are their voice with the C-suite, you're their voice with the executive team, and to help them cross that bridge with the folks in the US, and that's been really good. The other challenge is that I'm 44. The average age here is like 24 to 25, so it's a big gap. Now, if I had one superpower in my life, and I reflected about this, we do this exercise sometimes on executive meetings, like, what's your superpower and all that, and whatever. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But the one thing I've done well in my life is I'm good at getting along with people. I'm good at like fitting in different groups. Since I was a kid, I could be in school with like 3 different groups and be friends with all of them. And that has been kind of the story of my life, living in different places, making community, making friends. So it is something I really enjoy. My wife says I have a problem. I need to be liked by everybody, or I feel bad. But I don't know. That's the one thing I do well, I guess.
We might share that affliction.
I can see that, Tyler. I can see that.
I just noticed your shirt. I love that. Solve 'em problem.
I love this
Yeah.
t-shirt.
Oh, that's good. I guess for our listeners, it says, I'll enunciate. It says solve 'em probler. So problem solver. I want to ask a follow-up about that I was thinking of. You were describing the early days of establishing this office, and it sounds like you were really a doer. And I think that I've done a number of episodes with folks who have a legal background, maybe were GC, now they're taking on like a COO role, and the attractive part of that is that you get to really feel like you're not just an advisor to the business, you are part of the business and you're an operator. But is that right for everyone? Because you also have to be a doer, I think. And I think that some people might like sort of sitting back and advising and then letting other people go out and execute, as opposed to, I don't know, maybe you had to like place the order for the printers yourself. I'm not sure.
I did a bunch of, I have someone to help with that stuff now, but I did some of that stuff at the beginning, and I enjoyed that a lot. I guess always in my career, if I have to roll up my sleeves, I think it depends on the size of the company, but a company like when you're in the hundreds of employees, I think the executives need to be that type of executives. They need to understand the business, not the super nitty gritty, but at a really decent detail level to be effective as executives and to get the trust of the people that work with you. I never asked my team, and back on the days with the legal team and today with them, I've always tried to work as hard or harder than them. I don't want them to feel like I'm slacking ever.
Yeah.
It's something that got very ingrained into me when I was at Big Law. You work the hours you need to work, and of course I preach work-life balance, and my team, I always wanted to take vacation, but the more responsibility. It cannot be that you are the one that says, okay, now I go for my weekend and you guys stay working. If they have to work the weekend, I have to work the weekend. It has to be that way.
Hey there, legal teams. Big news. SpotDraft's fall release is here, and it's our biggest update yet. With over 15 new features, it's packed with tools to make contracting faster and simpler for you. Want complete control over your workflows? You've got it with customizable approvals that actually fit your processes. Looking for clarity? Use SpotDraft's new analytics offering to uncover insights and find ways for your legal team to move faster. We've also made it easier to manage your agreements with the new Legal Hub, a straightforward way to publish and update terms online without waiting on IT or marketing. And here's the game changer. Our AI tools, like Verify, take on the boring stuff, contract reviews, and metadata extraction, so your team can focus on making decisions that matter. It's everything you need to manage your contracts your way. Check it out at spotdraft.com/fall-release. That's spotdraft.com/fall-release. Now let's get back to the podcast. And I will say, just from personal experience working across a number of companies in that range, oftentimes the C-suite is maybe working the hardest, like almost could delegate a little more.
Yeah.
How do you feel like this experience of taking on the GM role has changed the relationships with, say, other members of the C-suite or with your CEO or with the CTO? How is that dynamic within the executive team evolved?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that so I've been at the company. It'll be 6 years in October. 6 years at a company like this feels like, I don't know, 500 years because so much has happened. We went to obviously rounds of funding, then we were acquired by a private equity, then I moved to Mexico. So a lot has happened in these 6 years. But I think the relationship with my other execs changed even before I became GM. It changed, and this is advice I try to give to other lawyers. It changed by making sure when I was in the room, I was not perceived just as a lawyer, but I was perceived as as a peer to them, as a business colleague. For that, you need to understand the product as well as they understand it, or relatively well. You're not going to understand it as well as the chief product officer, but you have to do your best. You need to understand the go-to-market motion as well as the chief revenue officer does. You have to basically understand the business. And
Yes.
then they realize, hey, this guy's not here just to opine on the law, but he can opine on anything because he knows as much as we do about the business. Um, that's one thing. Now, obviously, becoming GM with the CTO, for example, my relationship has only become even closer. Shout out to David
Mhm.
Bean, great guy. But obviously, I'm his eyes on the ground for a huge part of his team. So we have a very close relationship. The other thing is that I'm sure you experienced this. Executive teams in these companies change at a decently rapid pace. So having been here 6 years and the most tenure, even our founder and CEO stepped down as CEO
Right.
15 months, 16 months ago, and we had a new CEO who joined, Jesse, who joined in May. So I'm actually the most tenured person in the whole executive team, and that gives you some, for lack of better word, gravitas, because sometimes they're like, what about if we do this? And I'm like, yeah, guys, 5 years ago we did that, and this is what happened, or the other way around, right? So
Yep.
that has helped.
Institutional knowledge.
Yeah.
As we were prepping for this, I thought this was really interesting. You've now had the office open for say 18 months or maybe even a little longer. And I think it's only natural, right? Once a team gets to a certain size, 60 plus people, the office has been open longer than a year, right? Momentum might slow a little bit, or at least the day-to-day might not be just so like bright and fun as it was in the first 2 months. Everyone has experienced this in a job that they've had before. How are you helping lead the team in Mexico through that sort of maturation process, I guess is the way that I'd characterize it?
Yeah, that's a great observation, because exactly what happened here. We here at BetterCloud, we track what we call, well, not what we call, what is called ENPS, or Employee Net Promoter Score, which is basically the
Yeah,
whole
of
thing.
course.
Yeah, so for people that might not be as familiar, you ask employees a bunch of questions. One of them is, would you recommend someone to join BetterCloud? If they answer 9 or 10, they're a promoter. If they answer, I think, is anything under from 7 and 8 is like neutral, and then 1 to 6 is a demoter.
Mm-hmm.
So we track this every 3 months, and when we first did it in Mexico, the result we got, and that was I think at the beginning of this year, was a 70, right? Which is insane. It's off the charts. Usually anything over 30 is a positive score. It's a very positive score. So 70,
Mm-hmm.
I told them, it's like, you guys are happier to come to the office than to go to a club or to go to the beach. I'm like, to me, I love the office, but a job is a job, right? I'd rather be at home with my family, or hanging out with my friends. So
Sure.
I had in mind, this will go down. There's no way it stays like this. And surely enough, of course, pressure starts building. The team gets ramped up. The team gets enabled. They need to start shipping product, delivering. There's the realities of life, right? Some people leave the
Mm-hmm.
company. Some people may get terminated. So those things decrease this level of satisfaction. And now we've normalized, right? Now we are on a more mature, more normal type of score, which makes sense. And you see
Mm-hmm.
the energy of the office is different. At the beginning, it was all like pure joy. We're building something new. It was a little like drinking the Kool-Aid. And now it's more
Yeah.
like, it's a job, but it's a good job, and it's a job we enjoy. And the people that are here, people that want to grow with us and that feel happy doing that.
Yes. Are there specific things that you've done more recently to invest in the culture, or to try to make sure that people understand that they can grow with the business?
Yeah. So we, again, it's a very, in average, it's a junior population here in the Mexico office, right? Most of them is either their first job or their second job. I would say for 80%, 70% of the folks that work here. So for them, growth is very important, right? At that age, growth tends to come faster at the junior levels, right? To go from a
Yeah.
level 1 to a level 2 than once you're more senior, when it will take you longer. So there was a very organized approach to try to make sure the levels were well defined. We had a good growth plan for everybody with promotions, raises, come August. Took us longer than it should have taken us. And that's part of why that score went down, because there were some complaints around that. But we went through the process now in August, and a bunch of people were duly promoted, and that was great to see. A bunch of junior engineers get to the next level. So I think that piece was very important to them. And then we have a very good office manager. He's awesome. His name is Frank. So
Yeah.
shout out to him. He's awesome at creating all these different dynamics to make sure we all we bound together. So he recently organized what he called the selfie rally. We went across Condesa and Roma with like this gincana of different things we had to do and pictures we had to take, and those type of things. It seems like maybe it's not that important, but they do create this great atmosphere where you see after that day everybody's like feels closer together. It's you're paired with people you don't usually work with, and creates those relationships. So we try to do a bunch of that type of stuff. And yeah, I love coming to the office. To me, it's a happy place coming to this office.
An observation, I guess, as we start to wrap up the conversation around the GM role. You described it almost as not laying an egg, I think was the expression you used. I think another way to put being willing to embrace a role like this is being willing to embrace curiosity, or being a really curious person. It's a theme that I like to come back to in my conversations with folks. Like I said, it's more of an observation than a question, but like, how do you react to that or respond to that? Do you feel like curiosity has played an important role in your career and professional development?
Yes, 100%. To me, it's curiosity mixed with anxiety. It's that curiosity that's in the back of my mind and says, are you sure this is the right thing you should be doing? Should you be doing something else? Are you wasting your time? Should you be traveling somewhere else? Should you be living somewhere else? Should you be doing something else? So it's great. It forces me to do this stuff, but also creates anxiety on me that I'm never fully satisfied with anything, which kind of sucks. But I guess it's been good for my professional and personal life. So can't complain.
Any practical tips for folks who are thinking about doing what you've done in the past couple of years, which is take a job in a new country, or maybe a country you spent some time in, but a new place that you'd be living with a family? Like practical tips for how to navigate that transition?
Yeah. It's not as easy as when you were 25 and backpacking or moving somewhere else for like grad school. It is way more work when you have a family, right? So you need to start planning a few months before, especially if you have kids, for schools and all that. Even more, like we start planning this on like December of 23 to move in where are we? December of 22 to move in July of 23.
Oh, wow.
Because the school thing is complicated, right? It's mostly because of the kids. If you were just moving by yourself, or yourself and your spouse or couple partner, it's way easier. That's one thing. I think it's important that you look for a place to live, a neighborhood, whatever, where you feel like you can create community, where you're going to have close to you people you can hang out with, and for your kids, that's important. Yeah, I think those two things are to me very important. And the other thing to keep in mind is, not as much as we complain about the US, not every country is as efficient as the US, right? Like it's a lot of lot of bureaucracy and red tape you gotta do in other places. Love Mexico, but in Mexico, just so you get an example, you gotta get your visa permit in order to get your CURP, which is your ID number. But you need your ID number to get your social security number, and you need your social security number in order to get your tax number. So you have like 17 different numbers to get to the ultimate number that allows you to be an employee here. So there's a lot of that you're not used to, right? That works a little better in the US than in other countries.
Yeah, that's interesting. You've been there for almost 2 years. Maybe actually, yeah, a little more. What do you think's next for you? Are you going to stay in Mexico for longer? Are you going to come back to the U.S.? Are there other projects or roles that you're eyeing? What comes next?
It's I have to figure that one out. I'm definitely here for another school year with my kids.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then I don't know. I want whenever I leave BetterCloud years from now, whenever that is, I would like my next role to be at an early stage company. I've been thinking a lot about this, but early stage company, VC back, and where I own legal and more than legal. Right? I want other stuff to do. I just legal doesn't seem. I love legal, but I want other business stuff to do. So I don't know, HR. Security, corporate development, more stuff, whatever it is. I just love doing business stuff. So legal plus, call it.
Yeah. I think it's a great role and a great fit for you. I've got some fun questions for you now as we start to wrap up. What's your favorite part of your day to day?
Yeah. So, and my friends from Spain, when they listen to this, they'll be like, "Don't believe you." But I've taken to running, so I run every morning now. And I live in. I think you've been in Mexico City a few times, so you know it well.
I have, yeah.
I live in Condesa, and I live next to the park, the big park called Parque Mexico. And around that park, there's this beautiful street called Avenida Amsterdam. So running through that, it used to be a hippodrome, right? Horses used to run there in like the 19th century. So it's an oval.
Right.
It's a great place to run. And I do that every morning while listening to a podcast. I listen to all these Supreme Court podcasts, which also seems weird. If you guys haven't listened to 5 to 4 podcast about the Supreme Court, is great. Strict Scrutiny about the Supreme Court, and then Pod Save America. Now that the elections are coming, I love listening to Pod Save America. But to me, it's like my peaceful moment of the day, running around the park while listening to the podcast. I love that part of my day, and then I love when I go back home and I play with my kids a little before dinner. My son is into Transformers. He's got we counted the other day over 35 Transformers. So doing that, reading with my daughter, those parts of the day are great.
Awesome. I'm a big runner as well. I totally agree. I usually listen to music. I've been trying to listen to more podcasts. I totally agree with that. It's a great way to relax or unwind or get your mind right for the day ahead. Do you have a professional pet peeve?
Oof. I really do not like corporate jargon. So folks that use like the same type of expression all the time, I'm like, it really does not work for me. But it's so ingrained in the corporate America culture that I just have to like let it be. And then that's one. Another one that I'll tell a story. The first document I ever drafted at Cuatro Casas at this law firm in Spain, I drafted the document. It was some corporate resolutions. I don't remember what it was. I gave it to the partner. It was the old days. So I would print it, give it to the partner. He would review it with like a red pencil. I was like, this is great. This is like a fucking A+. I'm hitting the ball out of the park. He gave it back to me and it was all red. And I was like, what the? I saw he had like marked that I had extra spaces between words. And I was like, how can you even see that? Like, this is insane. Now, 20 years later, I've become that person that you give me something and I can see the extra space between two words. I cannot stand like the typos. My team, sometimes I'm like, you're a little too obsessive with this stuff. But yeah, that's me.
That's great. Track changes is your friend.
Yes.
I like this question. You've given us some good podcast recommendations. I'm a big reader. I like to read when I'm traveling. Any good books that you've read recently or that have been important to your professional journey that you'd like to recommend to our audience?
I read I read a lot of novels. I don't read anything or very little about like business or like startups. For whatever reason, in my mind, I'm like, there's so many good literature that has been written in hundreds of years. Why should I spend my time reading whatever book from like some startup VC person? I'm like, I'd rather read like a really good novel. So with that being said, I really recommend. I somehow came across, I went to a library in Mexico 2 weeks ago and I saw this book that I literally bought because I liked the cover. It seems interesting. It's called, I think in English it's called Death with Penguin, Death with a Penguin
Okay.
or Death with Penguin. It's a Ukrainian writer, wrote this in the 90s, and it's hilarious. It's such a charming book. So basically there's this writer that writes obituaries, but and I'm not disclosing much because that's the kind of the beginning of the book. Every
Uh-huh.
obituary he writes, he's told by the newspaper, write this obituary. He writes it, and then the person dies, right? So he's like freak out about that, obviously. So that's
Yeah.
A, and then B, the zoo in Kiev, for some reason they don't have enough money, so they start giving animals away, and he gets a penguin. So he lives with a penguin. It's called Misha. So the book is like, it reminds me of like the best Murakami type books. It's amazing. So I really recommend that book. Because I
Great.
knew nothing about it. Then I obviously started Googling the guy. He's apparently a famous Ukrainian writer, has written a bunch of books. I was like, I started ordering more books from him. So you should definitely read that one. And then I've been spending a lot of my time in Mexico reading a lot about novels from the revolution in Mexico or historical stuff in Mexico. So there's a bunch of those. Octavio Paz, who won the Nobel Prize, his wife is called Elena Garro, or was called, I think, I'm pretty sure she has to be dead. And she wrote some amazing books. And then on that genre, there's Roberto Bolaño wrote The Savage Detectives, which takes place in Mexico City and other parts of Mexico. And that book is also one of my favorites.
Great recommendations. As we start to wrap up, one last question for you, my sort of traditional closing question. And that's if you could look back on your days of being, maybe as you put it, a baby lawyer, just getting started, one thing that you know now that you wish that you'd known back then.
Yeah, so I've talked already about my curious anxiety. So what, as a result of that, and as you've seen in my career, I've changed a lot. I've done many different things, including practices within law firms, right? I changed from different practices. And many times I had this anxiety about my career not being linear, right? Like, oh, you look to your left and you have the M&A associate. That's all he's done for 10 years. And then he becomes partner. And then he's a partner for 35 years, which is great. And like some people love that and obviously make a lot of money and it's great for their lives and whatever. But just, I would have loved to tell myself, it's okay not to do things in a linear fashion. As long as you're learning and doing new things and you're happy with what you're doing and you're having experiences, you'll be fine. And me choosing not to have a linear career has taken me to live in whatever, 4 different countries, study in different countries, have all these experiences that I may not have if I just said the day I was hired by Cuatro Casas, I just want to be an M&A attorney in Madrid and that'll be my career forever.
And that, in a nutshell, is the theme of this podcast, said even better than I could say it.
Nice.
Manuel, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of The Abstract. This has been a lot of fun. I'm glad to finally have had you on.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you so much.
And to all of our listeners, thanks so much for tuning in, and we hope to see you next time.